Hello and welcome to this 15th edition of the Echo Chamberlain live stream. My performance was so bad in the 14th that there were panic emergency meetings with the suggestion that I might have to be replaced by Kamala Harris. But I'm staying in this battle. That's the first part. The second part is I'm the best person for the job. But to join me on here, I've got a whole bunch of great guests. My first guest has for many years been the man inside the suit as Chicago Bears mascot Staley DeBear, rousing the faithful at Soldier Field with his endearing high-energy antics. Here to tell me if he can do me a solid and get me season tickets is a man whose 4th of July weekend fireworks display crescendo lit up the night sky to the envious dazzlement of the entire neighborhood. He is Mr. Greg Owen.
Good evening, sir. And a good fireworks display, it's very important in Midwestern dad culture. That's how you assert dominance over the other dads. Yeah. You want to lock eyes with a fellow neighbor dad, and you want to start your lawnmower with one pull. That's how you let them know that you're in charge. But I will try to get you those tickets. Currently, I spent the entire week practicing my golf game. I don't know if you're aware, in America, we're going to transition to a new election system where a golf game is going to determine who becomes the next president, and I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. So I was working on my strokes and swing, putting game especially.
Mm-hmm. I imagined you at Christmas time. Your house is lit up like a Home Alone kind of like house.
I want to get the light turret machine gun from the Grinch movie, and I just want a 50 cal on there.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you on again. My next guest grew up in Northern Ireland, where in lieu of entertaining and charming firework demonstrations, the streets would crackle with live machine gun fire and incendiary grenades from British armed forces trying to separate Unionist, Loyalist, and Republican factions. To tell us if he ever threw an occasional Molotov cocktail or two as a wee lad is Despot of Antrim. Good morning.
Hey, how's it going, guys? No, I never held. We don't call them Molotov cocktails. We call them petrol bombs.
Oh.
Yeah, I had no idea what a Molotov cocktail was until I was well into my teens. Petrol bomb's a way better name for it anyway. And Echo, I have to tell you, given your consistent refusal to resign in favor of Kamala Harris, the funding for the Echo Chamberlain live stream is being cut off. So, I think you'll be several hundred millions of dollars in the red for the current editions of this live stream until you resign in favor of Kamala. So if you want to go forward with it, it's up to you, but you're going to have to do it on a shoestring.
All right. Well, bear that in mind. So my next guest, I'm kind of a little bit annoyed about this, actually, because I got overtaken by Greg Owen in the sub counts. And then the Hawk Tour girl obliterated my profile as well. And now this guy is ramping up in the subscriber count so much that he might even overtake me as well. So, Dark Owl, do you want a piece of me?
I think it would take me quite a while. I'm still at 1/5 of what you have, so I think you're safe. Now, all I can think of, by the way, is Despot tossing what he called a petrol bomb or a Molotov cocktail, being like, "The King James Bible isn't written well."
I think they refer to those as "Hello, Margaret Thatchers," if I'm not mistaken. Is that not right?
Margaret Thatchers. Never heard that one.
Yeah, well, we're all glad to see, if you're ramping up with the sub count there, DH. So that's great news.
Yes, I finally feel like less of a pretender nowadays. It feels really good.
Well, yeah, Greg and I were saying it takes, once you get over 50, that's when you start to sort of relax and think, maybe I am some kind of,
Well, I'm nowhere close to that. I'm hoping for 10 by the end of the year, and if I get to that, I'll be very happy with that. And apparently, someone really wants to know if we paid our taxes in the chat. So.
What's taxes?
What's taxes?
Theft. That's what they are. As Libertarian candidate for president, what I want to do.
All right. Well, little is known about today's featured guest, a man of shadows who keeps his friends close and his enemies even closer. and his frenemies so close they often complain to HR that he is invading their personal space. All while keeping his cards close to his chest. Orchestrating things behind the scenes is a Machiavelli, a Svengali, and a bloke who talks randomly about film. Despot would call him random film talk, but to the rest of the world, he is random film talk.
Well, hello, and yeah, thank you for the invite. It's good to be back. I feel like that brief introduction makes me sound far more mysterious and intriguing than maybe enigmatic than I actually am, because I'm just a guy who likes to talk about films, and I use a like derpified version of Kronk as my avatar in different get-ups. So yeah, I might have to buy a webcam sometime. I just haven't got around to it though.
Right. Well, it's great to have you all assembled, and you know, you went through an election, so it's been dramatic for you over there in the UK.
So I hear, yes. I haven't paid attention to what's happened since the election, so I guess we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get straight to the news. All right, gentlemen, so we like to open up with a few takes, and we like to scour the internet for the worst takes we can possibly find. And we've got some doozies here. So random, this just means you have to give it a rating 1 to 5. 1 being mild and 5 being heinous and egregious as a ridiculous take. So here we go. Yeah, here's our first little take here. Star Wars' biggest problem is the fans.
God damn it.
We're starting off.
You're going to be shocked by this, but this is from Collider. So, great.
Are we going top
Star
down?
Wars' biggest problem, the fans?
I think random should start.
Okay, so Star Wars' biggest problem is the fans, in the same way that the fans having standards is a problem. Which I guess is probably the only way that you can spin that and have it actually make sense, because if you're going to make and release something that is of the quality that something like the Acolyte is, there are going to be people who don't like it purely on the basis that it's bad. Even if it wasn't as bad as it in fact is, if it is not amazing, there are going to be a lot of people saying that it's bad. Yeah. So I guess those guys should probably not speak, because they have the wrong opinions and they have standards. I mean, I'm guessing that this article is complaining about a certain type of fan who maybe is saying mean things about the people involved.
Anybody who isn't genuflecting all over the show is they're wrong.
Yeah.
So, random, what would you give this out of 5?
It's got to be a 5. That is definitely not Star Wars' biggest problem. And even if the fans, even if Star Wars fans were a problem, that's not on them. They're reacting to something that they perceive as bad. Like that's not on them.
Well, let's go upwards. So Dark Hour, where does this go on your scale?
I'm going to give it a 4, and my reasoning is I do think that historically Star Wars fans, but before Disney, were always overly critical. So there is a nugget of truth in there, just not the way that they're saying it. That being said, the reason why I'm not giving it a 5 is because it's starting to wane on me. I've heard this probably about 8 years now, 9 years since when did
Last Jedi was 2017.
Yeah, so you're talking like 8+ years. So at this point, it's just a broken record. So I can't give a broken record a 5. So I'm going to give it a 4.
All right, Despot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very close to agreeing with Dark Hour, but I am going to give it a 5, because if this was something like Ahsoka and fans were getting up in arms about something like Ahsoka, and Ahsoka's crap, but it's also kind of mid in certain aspects. You know, there's actually no, it's terrible. But from the perspective of the average normie, if they're watching it, they can think of it as mid, and they're allowed to think of it as mid. But with something like the Acolyte, it's just so irredeemably shit. It's so incontestably terrible that to pretend to sit there and try to go through this farcical pretense that this isn't the worst fucking thing anyone has ever seen with a Star Wars skin suit on it is absolutely absurd. Of course, the problem isn't the fans. The problem is stuff like the Acolyte. Disney should be grateful that there are any fans left at this stage, that there's anyone willing to tune in to their turgid shit that they call Star Wars. It's so boring and slow and meandering and pointless. It's just content. My God. So if you think that's Star Wars, I mean, if Star Wars' biggest problem obviously is Kathleen Kennedy, but I mean, there are many, many, many problems with Lucasfilms that I would put before you might say the biggest, also the semantics of it. They say the biggest problem is the fans, and what they mean is the biggest problem is fan entitlement, I think is what they really mean, or the biggest problem is spoiled fans, or something like that. But why is it a problem to have fans that have expectations of good quality? It's utterly ludicrous. It's so ridiculous. I mean, does a band show up to an interview and say, we write great music, but the problem is our fucking fans, man, they suck. It's just crazy. Yeah. It's so absurd. It's so crazy. We've forgotten how ridiculous this actually is. And I don't know if Disney are paying them to do this, or if this is Lucasfilm has sent out press packets encouraging their shills to say this kind of stuff. But it needs to stop because, I mean, look at Pixar. Pixar have turned the ship around a little bit with Inside Out 2. They've listened to the feedback and they've responded. Look at Game of Thrones. They've responded very well to the failure of Game of Thrones season 8 by turning the ship around and producing something of quality in House of the Dragon. Stranger Things went from a shit season 3 to a really good season 4 by listening to the feedback. It's just getting embarrassing now. Because I was watching House of Dragon last night, episode 4, and I was like, man, this is really excellent. But I was also thinking, this just embarrasses Disney Lucasfilm now. It's getting to the point where it's just embarrassing.
I don't think that they're paid shills. I just think that their politics lines up with the message that Acolyte is doing. So they just agree with it blindly because they're like, oh, if I don't agree with it, I'm going against my own politics.
All right.
That has made me think, though. I think I want to wind my answer down to a 4.
Oh, that's good.
Because we've got, of course, Andor exists, and Andor is like the diamond in amongst all of the trash that's come out of Disney Star Wars. And at least to my knowledge, Andor, amongst people, I guess people like us who are usually critical and rightfully so of Disney Star Wars, we generally think that Andor is the head and shoulders above the rest of it. Whether that is the view that Disney had or Kathleen Kennedy had, honestly, who knows? But the impression that I get is that your quote-unquote Star Wars fan doesn't want shows like Andor. They want shows like Kenobi. They want shows like Ahsoka. They want shows like season 2, in particular, of The Mandalorian, because it's key jangly nostalgia bait, which means that in that sense, the fans could be described as being part of the problem, because it's going to lead to us getting more shows like Kenobi and like The Mandalorian and less shows like Andor. But, I mean, we are getting a season 2 of Andor, so I guess we'll have to see where that goes.
Yeah, we're also getting a Mando movie, and
there's
a whole host of crap in there.
I see
your guys' reasoning, especially Dark Hour. I see the reasoning of like it's boring at this point, but I'm still going to go with 5 because I don't want to allow this to get so boring and passé that then it becomes like it becomes normalized that we just that's just normal. It should be called out as the utter trash opinion that it is every single time. It's a 5 opinion. And I also think that I do think it lines up with their politics. This is this is kind of the mindset where you think, it's the audience is always to blame. It's not the creator. It's not my job to create something that's worthwhile, that has any value. I get to just decide that I get money and I should, and what the people actually want, and that none of that matters. So this blaming of the fans is indicative of a wider mindset that they have, that the people don't need to be served. It's just the creators that are the most important. And I think that's disgusting. I'm always going to give that a 5. I think the other week I said something was a 4 for the same reason. Like, I'm used to it. I'm bored. I gotta get away from that. We got to call this crap horrible every time.
Yeah, fair enough. I'd give it a 4. I'm just so used to the mixture of being disingenuous and flaky at the same time. So let's move on to our next one. Now, in the UK election, big issues of civic responsibility, housing, immigration, fiscal policy. But that's not necessarily the most important consideration. Being non-binary makes voting in the election harder.
Why?
Well,
I'm genuinely trying to speculate on why that would be, because all you need to do to vote is you need to have you need to be registered to vote, which means you need to have ID, and you need to have a place of residence. Like, that's it.
But does the ID identify you as non-binary, Random?
I am not non-binary, so I could check my passport and see. It's not going to say that, but
not you personally. But is it within British law? Are you allowed to have a non-binary passport?
So yeah, this is the thing. I honestly know barely anything about the whole LGBT stuff. I don't know if that kind of thing appears on passports, but that's a good point, because if it doesn't, then this starts to make a little bit more sense.
Also, what candidate can this girl see herself in, or can these people see themselves in? I mean, Keir Starmer's not non-binary. I'm not even sure he's human, but I know he's not non-binary. Nor is Rishi Sunak, was certainly not. I mean, Rishi Sunak actually thinks he knows how to define a woman, which is terrible, you know. To be fair, Keir Starmer did say 99.9% of women in the UK do not have a penis. So that's true. That would make it a little bit easier for a non-binary voter to vote, I would think.
I mean, I did see something the other day where I think it was David Lammy who was claiming that I don't know which way around it is, trans men or trans women, one of them can grow a cervix, which obviously that's not how that works. Yeah. But no, as for who you vote for, if you're a non-binary person, I genuinely don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, you could simultaneously leave and remain.
I'm just gonna give this a 3 because I'm kind of confused. You know, it is a tough one. I do feel for the non-binary voting bloc. I see great potential there, but yeah, they haven't quite been tapped into. I'll give this one a 3.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I zoned out. I was something came up with I thought Mahler was trying to say he wanted to get into the stream, and I was getting the info for you, and I totally zoned out on the on the. Whoa, so what's the topic? What's going on?
Well, hook us up with Mahler if he's around. But
well, he said he'll come on sometime. So
great. Well, we were just wondering, Darko, and I think this pertains to the U.S. election as well, the Electoral College. Being non-binary makes voting in the election harder.
Why would it make it harder here? We don't actually have any voter like ID laws here. You don't even need to prove who you are half the time. By election, you walk in and just say a name, and they just point you to the booth. There's no. You could literally go over to someone's house, pick up a piece of their mail. You don't even need to take it with you. You don't need to be like, oh look, I have a water bill. Like, you could just read their name, go over and say, hey, I'm Greg Owen, Despot Dark Hour. There you go. I just made up a name out of nowhere. And
cool.
They just go and they just cross the name off the list, hand you your ballot, and let you walk in. At least here. I mean, I don't know if it's the same near you, Greg, but that's exactly how we do it here.
Illinois is identical. They have a binder in front of them, like sitting on the table in front of you. So you could look down and just be like, yeah, I am Stacey Williams. That's me right there.
Yeah, so it could literally nothing about who you are identifying as could possibly make it more difficult to vote in the United States. It's probably the easiest. To my knowledge, we're one of the few countries that doesn't have voter ID laws. I think a lot do. So
we don't have voter ID laws federally. I know, and there may be
some states do. Some do.
We don't have a national language either, which is a unique thing about the states. Like we're real loosey goosey with a lot of things.
That one I at least kind of get where they were going with, because it was like one of our main things we were founded on was right to free speech, and then to tell people they are forced to learn a language at the time seemed like it was going against that. Now, in hindsight, it's annoying. We do have a legal codifying language in the United States, so our de facto legal codifying language is English. So by default, English became our main language. It was almost German for the codifying language, actually. So,
wow, that would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right. Well, let's move on to our last one. which is this. Thanks for this, Greg. It's time to start trusting video game reviewers.
Says a video game reviewer. This is the greatest. I just picture those deep sea fishes with the giant fangs and the little bright ball in front. Every time I see something like this, like, just come on in. Come on in.
So, Random, is it time to start trusting video game reviewers? Come on.
So is this prompted by the whole Elden Ring expansion, where I think I saw something where what is it, games journalist mode? It reignited that discussion. There was someone who was claiming that it was a reviewer who just couldn't be like the first boss or something, so they were unable to do their job and review the game, which then obviously raises the question: why are you a video games journalist or reviewer? But then the thing with this is, if this is relating strictly to the difficulty argument, I can kind of see both sides, because if, like, the developers of Elden Ring, for example, had infinite time and resources, then it would, I think, be better for the consumer for there to be a adjustable difficulty modes. Obviously, that's not the case, which is why they make the game as it is. But yeah, why should we suddenly start trusting them now? I don't know. If we're going to stick a number on that, 3.5, because I don't know why now of all times we should start trusting video game reviewers more than we did last week.
Yeah, I think the jury's kind of in when it comes to game reviewers, at least this year.
I just realized I didn't give a number for the last one. 5 for the last one, by the way.
Yeah.
I was so distracted.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you give for this one, Darko?
I'm kind of with like Random in this sense that which game reviewers are we talking about? Are we talking about the ones that are working for websites that are getting paid, or in some cases there's still, magazines that are getting paid to give good reviews to specific ones? Or am I paying attention to your independent, games reviewer? There's a reason why people started gravitating toward Let's Plays as a way to find out whether or not they wanted to buy a game. And that's because that was the most pure form of a review. Watching someone's immediate reaction to playing something, like some people can fudge around with that, make themselves seem more into things. But for the most part, you were getting the purest form of a review. And I think the one that was, I'm not sure if the one who complained about it and also was bringing up the, what is it, the mode with the super easy mode,
games journalist mode.
Games journalist mode. Was that Alana Pierce? Was she the one who brought that? Because I know she was complaining about how she had a disability because she had a kid.
That was the one. Yeah, she brought up situational disabilities, which I have never heard that term before. Apparently, like it's among the new litany of soft language changes that make you unique. And
I really want
situational disability.
I would love to see.
It's an inconvenience.
So it's an inconvenience. She has a kid, and the kid didn't allow her to play the game, so she considered it a situational disability, which I think she should be eligible to enter the Special Olympics because of this, because this is clearly a huge problem for her. But if you
use the bathroom, she listed as well. That video is all over the place.
So that means that she thinks that her child has made her disabled.
So, yes, basically, because she can't hit pause if her kid runs in the room and has cut their hand wide open or something. So it was a random thing. And that's a disability because now she dies in the game. It's like, or you could just be a parent and not worry about that highly specific situation.
Wait, does Elden Ring not have a pause button? I've not
supposedly.
Played it.
I don't know. I don't play a lot of those Souls-like games. I'm not that hardcore of a gamer, so
it kind of does. It's like a weird workaround. You can technically pause it, but most Souls games do not. The only game they ever made that had it was this game called Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. It did have a pause button. Why they don't have them, I do think is a little strange, but to base an entire video around the lack of a pause button, and to call kids a situational disability, like it was very, very weird. This game is causing people to have some crazy takes.
So as for how crazy this, I would just say this is a 3 because of the fact that I don't have enough context as to which reviewers they're talking about. I know I went on a bit of a rant there, but
that's fine. All right, Despot, nice and quickly. Is it time to start trusting video game reviewers?
I'll give it a 3. There are some good video game reviewers that are very good, like Nintendo Life on YouTube. But they're very normie, they're very mainstream, but they are very good. They do good reviews.
All right. Okay, well, let's move on to some. This just sort of broke today, as far as I saw. So Sergio Leone and Clint Eastwood classic A Fistful of Dollars getting remake from Hollywood and Italian industry vets. So what's it, an fistful of Bitcoin? Why would you remake like a perfect classic that is a perfect one and done? There's absolutely no reason to do this, and there's absolutely no way in which it could be even remotely half as good. Annoys me.
Same reason you would remake Seven Samurai, but set it in space and add a shitload of slow-mo. I mean, some people just think that they're amazing, and that's the kind of dumb crap they do.
Yeah. If this was made by, what's his name, that bloke who did Rebel Moon.
Oh, Zack Snyder.
Yeah, if this was made by Zack Snyder, I'd watch it just because it would be such a hilarious train wreck. But if they're going to try and do this sincerely, why? They'll mess up the masculinity. They'll get it all wrong. They'll cast an actual Latino person rather than have a Jewish person play a Latino person. They'll get it all wrong. So, what a terrible decision. Who would green light this? And who could possibly, embody that character as well? It's a perfect one and done. It's insurmountable. Why would you even do a pastiche? Why would you even do an homage when you're not even going to get remotely close?
I can already tell you who's going to play the main character. It'd be Pedro Pascal, 100%. It's 100. That's who, they've already cast him before they made this announcement.
You're right.
I was going to ask, like, who would you guys cast if you had to cast it right now? But I don't think any answer is going to be Pedro Pascal. I
don't want to cast Pedro.
Oh,
Pascal.
I know.
I just know they're going to.
Yeah. He's saying
if I had to cast this, if I had to do it, I would cast Austin Butler as the Clint Eastwood role.
Ooh, okay.
No, too much of a pretty boy.
No. But like he can make himself. He can unpretty himself a bit. I think. He's a good enough actor that he would embody that and change it up a bit. It's very Christian Bale in that sense. He can
Jennifer Lawrence would be a good
so you guys are being serious. I was gonna agree in the chat. Somebody said Timothy Chalamet, which was gonna be my suggestion. That's what they'll probably go with, is they'll go with Chalamet. Because that's the new man.
They're going with Pascal, 100%. They would he would fit the exact look they would want to go for.
Mm-hmm. They did remake The Magnificent Seven in 2016. They had Denzel Washington as the lead, and it flopped. I actually saw it in cinema.
That's right.
It was crap.
Yeah.
And
I never saw that one.
From a purely commercial perspective, this is a bad idea because Western remakes tend to do very poorly. I think the last big profile one I remember was The Magnificent Seven. It did badly. And I don't see this. Like, if you remade this, it's a classic, but it's a classic that a lot of younger cinema goers and film fans wouldn't be familiar with today. So I can't imagine that it would do well if they were to remake it today.
Yeah,
I would go with one person. One person could pull it off. I'd put Michael Fassbender in the role. I think he could do an okay job.
So
I could see that. Yeah.
From a perspective of if they do make this, I think that the ideal kind of person, I don't have a specific one in my mind, but I think it would be a really good spot for maybe an actor that's fallen out a little bit older that isn't getting as much work because of said, pretty boys, like you said. I think that and if it was handled in a way that like that, it could work. If it wasn't just let's make everybody young and sexy and take away the grittiness and actually try to be as faithful as we can. Other than that, though, this is another one of those. And I know, did anybody actually give our reaction numbers to this one?
No, this is separate. This is our first item on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. But yeah, if they did that, if they actually like approached it and tried to be as faithful as they can to the style, just with updated technology and people, and they got somebody who was maybe like a 48 to like 55-year-old actor who is not getting as much work anymore. I can't think of anybody. Maybe one of you guys can, but
I mean, Matt Damon's around that age, I think.
For me in chat said John Bernthal, which might work. I think Carl Urban might be able to do a good job.
Carl Urban, that's a good one. Carl Urban's a good one.
Yeah.
Anthony Starr from The Boys, even though everyone is dissing on the latest season, I think he could be quite good. Anyway, so that's another tragic remake on the way. All right, so we're going to wrap up this Acolyte bullshit because I stopped watching after episode 6 or something.
I had to watch episode 6 today. I didn't watch it last week. I just didn't give enough of a shit to even. make a video about it. I'm so bored with it.
They're my most successful videos of all time. I must continue, apparently.
Yeah, well, I might have to go and make another one just because my last House of the Dragon video, which was positive, was probably my worst viewed video. Yeah,
you knew that was going to bomb though. Like as soon as I saw that, as soon as I saw your House of Dragon video, and it said something like House of Dragon is excellent, I thought that is going to bomb because it's a positive video, right?
Yeah.
Well,
always
there's not a lot of conversation going on with House of the Dragon. Like, I think people either like it or they don't. There's really not a lot of controversy. There's really not a lot of discussion being had. I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, it's pretty good, and it just sort of ends there for some reason. I really don't see a lot of talk about it for some reason.
I think it's still suffering from the end of Game of Thrones, even though there was a really good first season. Well, okay, I won't say really good. It was very pretty good, not very good. And then this season's been pretty good so far. I think it still suffers from the fact that so many people were let down by the end of Game of Thrones. It's gonna take like 4 seasons of really good to get out of that.
Probably.
That the end of Game of Thrones is the exact reason why I have not watched any House of the Dragon, even though I have heard that it is exactly the kind of thing that I would like. So at some point I will get round to watching it. I'm not sure I can take being burned again by Daenerys, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to talk about the discourse around the show, because when shill media, sycophantic media, they will go to extraordinary lengths and these weird tautologies they create, and they'll find dubious statistics to try and back stuff up. So there's one article here, Screen Rant. So exclusive data suggests the Acolyte is a Star Wars success story despite the backlash. And this is one of those things where your brain starts to melt, where you read the actual key sentences about, allegedly where they're getting this from. As to how, this is from an article responding to it, as to how the streaming and engagement metric is determined, Bacon, the author of the articles, explained. Real Good compared the live-action Star Wars Disney Plus TV shows, looking at the first 14 days since the Acolyte's release. They found that the Acolyte is the second most successful in terms of streaming and engagement. And here's where my brain melts. Furthermore, a note on the article states, Real Good defines engagement as an aggregation of user interactions with titles across Real Good platforms, including playbacks, tracking, and other interactions. I could read that sentence 100 times. I could read it backwards. I could take magic mushrooms to try and enhance the experience, and it still wouldn't make any sense to me. The data flies in the face of other metrics, such as the Walt Disney Company's own global views for the show, as well as minutes watched data from analytics firm Luminate. Disney previously reported the Acolyte only had 11 million global views after a week on Disney+. Given Disney calculates a view as minutes watched divided by total runtime, that brought total minutes watched to around 820 million globally. Nielsen reported that Ahsoka's 2 episodes premiere had 820 million in the US. So, Greg, this sentence, Real Good defines engagement as an aggregation of user interactions with titles across Real Good platforms, including playbacks, tracking, and other interactions. Are you able to get from the beginning of that sentence to the end without your brain snapping?
It just, I'm trying to think of what, to me, it just feels like anything having to do with this show counts as engagement. And so they're claiming everything. Every time the word Acolyte is mentioned anywhere on the internet, they're claiming that as engagement and calling it a success is what I'm gathering from this. But since I've never heard of Real Good,
I'll look up what it is. Hold on.
I have no idea.
It's a platform that measures viewer metrics, but it's dodgy. But if you're doing this, but Disney has already released its official figures, and then you're going into bat on behalf of Disney by looking at alternate, dubious, nebulous figures somewhere else.
Yeah,
it's just so weak.
Well, and the follow-up sentence that it flies in the face of Disney's own view numbers. Disney reported that nobody's watching this, but Real Good says, hold on, no, they're actually wrong. It's super successful, even though nobody's watching it. I don't understand how that works exactly.
So apparently it's some sort of weird combination, including whether or not you use a VPN to watch it, which is strange. Okay. I'm kind of just flipping through what their metrics are, how many thumbs up and things it gets on various any topic involving the word, I guess, or the title. So let's not say the word. Remove it from the title if you have it in the video, please. Yeah, so it does seem like any kind of like pauses and rewinds just add to the amount of watch time. So that means all of us who went back and had to rewind and re-listen to a line to write into our we contributed.
Let me ask the panel this. After the Rings of Power debacle, the mainstream media did actually eventually come out and admit that the thing was shite. So, for example, The Guardian, which had initially responded very positively and which had been on board with the fan attacks and the fan bait strategy of calling all the Tolkien fans racists, they even came out and admitted that it was a stinker. That was the word they used, stinker. And a lot of mainstream media outlets followed suit. They said, Rings of Power was actually kind of crap once it was all said and done. Do you think we're going to see the same thing happen with The Acolyte? Is the mainstream press and these mainstream shills and publications eventually just going to come out and admit that whatever the politics surrounding it, it's just a terrible show? Once all this is said and done, do you think they'll admit that? Will they get off that garbage heap instead of, fighting on until they die upon it?
I think that the worst they're going to say is that it was very average. That's as far as they'll give it, or they'll call it mid or something like that. They won't ever go to that. So over at Forbes, there's a guy, Paul Tassi, that writes tons of stuff. And do you need me to go ahead? It's off. Sorry, I had kids run through here. So he writes a bunch, and he's on a bit of a crusade at the moment to, expose the review bombing that's happening to The Acolyte. And he's, and so he's writing about this horrible review bombing. And I've got a clip of it here because it's in a video soon. And he says, "I'm not even The Acolyte's biggest fan, as the first 2 episodes I didn't love, though I thought episode 3 was more interesting. But the worst Star Wars project by any order of magnitude in the history of the series." So his whole review is just like, guys, it's not a 1 out of 10. That's ridiculous. It's like a 4. So come on, let's quit being silly about that. And I think that's what they'll all kind of gravitate to, is they'll take the angle of, these review bombers all said it was a 0, 1 out of 10. That's ridiculous. It's really a 4, but it's not the worst thing you've ever seen. And that, and that's how they'll admit that it really wasn't that great, by framing it as not as bad as the haters said it was.
Yeah, I think it's a lot.
I think it's too identitarian as a show for them, so therefore it's too ingrained in their own identity and perspectives for them to be able to acknowledge or concede that it didn't connect with a large audience. I don't think they can make that psychological leap, but I think they might get around to the idea of saying that it was great in spirit and attitude, but it perhaps didn't quite deliver on the screenwriting. They might get to that.
I mean, that makes sense to me, but like one difference between The Acolyte and like Rings of Power, to use that as an example, is that Rings of Power came out and then it's basically sat there for 2 years until season 2 comes out in a couple of months, which means that it has been the only quote unquote Tolkien property that has been released in that time. So then there are going to be people, I guess, talking about it and changing their minds on it. In the case of The Acolyte, you've got Ahsoka, Boba Fett, Mando, and they just keep releasing them, which means that the people who are trying to potentially defend this show, they don't necessarily have to change their mind, because the next one will be out by the time they would change their mind. Like I don't usually pay attention to this kind of thing, so I don't know if what we're talking about, did this happen with Ahsoka? Did the culture shift on that? A few months down the line after release.
No, I don't think it did.
No one talks about Ahsoka anymore.
That's my point. I'm expecting that will probably happen with The Acolyte, because
I'm interested to see if Rings of Power season 2, as it approaches, if there will be a surge of articles convincing us that season 1 wasn't actually that bad. Like,
so I've already seen some of those.
Now that the controversy is over, so and so watched it, and it wasn't as bad as everybody made it out to be, or as bad as we remember, or whatever. There'll be a bunch of that to try to hype up season 2.
Well, to say that season 1, it had to be a little bit slower because they had a lot of world building to do. They had to introduce a huge amount of characters, and now the show can really let fly. So
The cycle of these things is actually designed to make people forget, though, especially with Disney. But it's almost like across the board with all the different streaming services. They release in patterns that make you forget about the last thing very quickly because they're bumped up right against each other on purpose. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. So basically, Screen Rant ran to Goodreel in an attempt to spin the Acolyte as a success. The index they shared provides no meaningful data. It does not reveal how they came up with the index. It's quite possible they just created a bar chart and put a bunch of numbers next to each other and said, have at it. Oh, God damn it. All right. Well, Star Wars takes the clothes off of yet another Sith, but this time they have a good reason. And I wanted to read from... Leslie Headland's own views, because we're in Cuckoo La La Land. Remember, this is a space opera film franchise, right? But here's her preoccupations and interests. In her recent interview with Collider, the creator of the show sat down and explained the dynamics of Khmer's and OSHA's current relationship. At one point in the interview, Headland was asked whether Khmer seemed softer than OSHA on purpose. As an example, the interviewer mentioned Khmer cooking for OSHA and OSHA wearing pants. Headland confirmed that this was intentional. Khmer already proved what kind of brutality he was capable of, and now, around OSHA, he needs to prove that he is also capable of deeper emotion and thought, and apparently this means showing him wearing white and cooking. So this is Leslie Headland, which works so well. I think that also creates some of the best dynamics in storytelling. Speaking about costumes and symbolism, I love how the show plays with gender norms. You have this flowy outfit that Khmer has on, and OSHA is a mech. I see people starting to pick up on that a little because he's so femme-coded, and his clothes, and the fact that he's cooking for her, and he's very soft-spoken. And then you have her wearing the pants and being like, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to shank you. Greg, what the fuck is going on?
He was wearing clearly what to me looked like kind of they were trying to get like a samurai look. He had the long flowing pants, the wide leg pants, and I didn't think it was feminine, flowy outfit. It clearly looked like a samurai style outfit. That I don't understand how that denotes feminine at all. I don't think of that. And then her saying it works well is incredible. It's
femme-coded. This is Star Wars. You rescue the princess, you slay a dragon, you got laser swords and stuff.
Was Yoda femme-coded? He cooked for. He was cooking in Return. Empire Strikes Back. Was he femme-coded? Like,
I just think it's funny that she thought she really had this deep symbolism going on here. Like she believed that having him wear white, and I mean, she sounds like a brand new film student who really makes these super obvious observations and thinks that it's really profound. But none of it actually played in the episode at all. The only thing I got from that scene, to me, I thought they were trying to make him seem stronger because he was naked and she was armed. She had the lightsaber. He had literally nothing, like he was in his skin and was still in control of the situation. He was very calm. To me, I thought they were trying to get across, look how badass this guy is. Even when he's totally naked and she's armed, he's still totally controlling the conversation, controlling the situation. I thought that's what they were going for. So to hear Headland then come out and say, "Oh, look at this! I was doing this counterplay, subversion, symbolism." Like, no, you weren't. But okay, if that's what you want to tell yourself, that's fine.
So if I understand correctly what happens in that episode, because I haven't seen it, I've only seen Little Platoon's video on it. The villain is at that point manipulating the hero or trying to manipulate the hero, which has nothing to do with gender norms. So the villain is like fucking around with quote unquote gender norms, what this Leslie Headland believes to be gender norms, in order to manipulate the hero, which means that the villain is weaponizing gender ideology, which isn't subversive or groundbreaking. It's just a villain being a villain.
Right.
I don't understand how she could have this take.
No, he was very much like, look, I'm not as bad as, you think that I'm this murderer or whatever. I was just defending, like she accuses him of all these things in the scene. And he's like, I was just defending myself. She says, oh, you killed that girl, Padawan. He's like, how do you think that would have gone? She was trying to kill me. She says, you killed these Jedi. And he says, oh, you don't know what they've actually done. Here, I made you some soup. I'm really a nice, gentle guy. I'm trying to convince you that the Jedi are really the wrong ones. And I'm actually the right one here. So yeah, it was very typical villain manipulation, let me make you second guess what you think you know. Let me convince you that my side is actually the right side. It was pretty standard stuff. That this all that she's talking about is it reminds me of like a modern artist describing their literal pile of, or they dumped a bucket of sand on the ground and they tell you how it represents the decaying of late stage capitalist society and gender norms and the fall of the patriarchal system or some shit. Like it's a bucket of sand on the floor. I don't know what you're talking about. That's what this feels like.
Just shoving like identity and gender politics into this stuff and ideas of femme and gender norms. I'm not sure if Star Wars is the right template to be exploring those ideas.
I mean, at this point, they have very little actual audience left to even worry about. So yeah, they're just using it as a template for whatever the fuck they feel like.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting that Leslie Headland is basically affirming here that apparently cooking is only for women. Like
somebody in the chat said it best.
Offensive,
The majority of chefs are men.
Yeah.
All right, so speaking of men, we're going to be doing something I tentatively call the beta test, which is, in other words, we need to find out who is the most soy boy represented on our screen. So we have to do it in brackets. And so we're going to go through the brackets one by one, and you have to decide who is the most soy beta male-ish character in each bracket. So our first bracket, we have our lovely little Jedi guy. Or
that's the guy from Rings of Power. I remember him.
Who's the friendly sailor guy who's the most doughy-faced person.
He's the only person who dies in the volcanic eruption, so that way they wouldn't have a volcanic eruption where no one died.
All right, so random. In our first bracket of soy boys, who was the most soy?
So I don't know who the guy on the left is. I don't know if guy is the right terminology anyway, but the guy on the right, I know that he's at least somewhat competent in Rings of Power. He has a girlfriend or fiance, if memory serves, and he also is a soldier. So yeah, he dies when he probably shouldn't have. So I'm going to say not him, the other one. The other one is the most soy, if I understand the terminology.
Yes. All right, so Isildur's sailor friend and so passive Jedi dude. Dark Owl, who would you go with?
I agree with Random 100%. Being a sailor, despite his look, tends to be at least somewhat of a manly profession. So it at least elevates him a little bit above I don't even know his name anymore. The Jedi.
Okay.
Padawan Terrible Beard. He's going to be. That's going to be.
He doesn't do anything either. He's just like.
All right. Despot?
Yeah, I'll go with Jedi Master, yes, because the guy he doesn't even put up a fight. He just, the evil twin shows up and she says, here, drink this poison. And he wakes up and he drinks it. And it's pathetic. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, so straight out of the gate, he does well. And let's go to our second bracket, which will be...
the same bracket.
Yeah. So,
you can't do this to me. I hate that character. You can't do this to me.
So I'm not sure if any of you have seen this new Jedi guy.
Oh yes, I have, and he's probably going to take the whole contest.
Obi non-binary was that was solid. That was really good.
Yeah. So I don't know. You got some competition here. Just with any thoughts?
It's so obvious what Leslie Headland is doing here. I know it's tempting not to think in terms of the political framing of the show, but it's so obvious that Leslie Headland has gone out of her way to make all the white men look as weak or as criminal or as all the men in general, but particularly the white men. They have to look pathetic. Like this guy's function is to try to make Leslie Headland's wife, do you know Karen Green from HR, the green one? So Karen
Who's
Karen
definitely not the Jedi that spurned Darth Brachialis there, Darth Big Arms.
Karen Green from HR goes to the planet where Kylo Rentboy killed everybody, and then she investigates it, and this guy goes with her to try to make the actress, Leslie Headland's wife, look like she has a little bit of gravitas and that she is intimidating because they need someone next to her who is just the most pathetic wee dweeb they could find to just try to make her look somewhat tough in comparison. It doesn't work, by the way, but it's so obvious that that's what's going on here. It's so fourth wall breaking and immersion shattering. But this wee creature on the right here, he's so pathetic. He stutters. He has this timid wee mousy voice. He has a round-shouldered kind of timid posture. And it's kind of sad. I feel sorry for him, so I just called him Ivan Drago in my script to kind of give him a little bit of masculinity because Leslie Headland wouldn't. So I'm going to go with Ivan Drago.
Right, we're happy with that.
his whole, you're right, his entire role is to just say, shouldn't we do this? And have Leslie's wife go, no, you dumbass, I'm doing this. Don't question me. And that's like, he's just wrong all the time. That's his whole function.
Their back and forth is one of the weirdest things too. It's like, you get sick in hyperspace.
Yeah,
it's like,
strange.
It's like, no, I find it unsettling. Like, that doesn't answer the question at all. Like, what are you like?
Even look where his fucking belt is. They've brought his belt like he's in a retirement home. They've got it right up just below his chest, as if he's an 80-year-old. They've done everything they can to make this guy look.
I think he takes the term soy boy quite literally because he doesn't look like he's ever consumed any actual meat or protein in his life.
Yeah,
so he probably takes it from a literal perspective.
Yeah. All right, strong contender. Okay, so this guy is Kimmer from Rings of Power as well. Look at that soft, doughy, impressionable, lovely face. And then you've got Fred, and what happened to him? So who was the most soy out of these two?
Do we know anything about this the size of either of these two's penis? Do we know anything about their penises?
Well, Fred apparently is very small. I can't remember why. I'm not sure if he's even gone through puberty yet officially.
Was that only mentioned like one time though? I missed it in the show. Yeah. Just briefly gloss over the size of his penis, or
So
I didn't even watch the show, and I know that reference so much. It's like, I didn't even.
Yeah. Well, random. Who would you plump for out of these two?
So, of those, the fact that, like, I haven't seen Velma, but even I know that Fred has a tiny penis. Kemen is
so bad.
I mean, he's an incredibly weak character in Rings of Power. Not that any of them are particularly strong. He's extremely selfish. He's a liar. He's hilariously incompetent. He risks multiple people's lives in order to get laid. And
well, haven't we all done that?
Fair enough. But I mean, the fact that we don't see it, but the fact that he ends up in a relationship would suggest that his penis isn't as small as Fred's. So I'm gonna go with Fred.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Fred as well mostly because it's tearing down such a like a Chad dude that just drives around in his van, you know, not being scared of ghosts and shit, like, and it's tearing him down so far that you got to just go with that.
Okay, so you're going with this iteration of Fred, not Fred per se.
No, yeah, this iteration I think is such it's such a downgrade from the real thing that this one just takes the cake right there.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I'll go with Fred as well.
Okay, Fred it is.
Yeah,
okay, next.
I'll say Fred, but I do just quickly want to comment. I think that any YouTuber that watched both seasons of Velma in order to content farm should be given a medal of recognition.
Noted.
Only Despot, I think, actually did it though. So
no, me and Greg did it.
Oh, okay. Well, you guys deserve him as well.
Oh God, I need therapy.
Okay. So this is the prince from Damsel versus Jord or Jord. I keep forgetting his name.
Jord. Oh my God! If you watched my video, I fucking hate Jord so much.
I was so happy when he died.
I played his death like 3 or 4 times in my video just as a palate cleanser. I was so.
Well, Despot, I thought you might. I might get you with the Damsel.
I mean, you've got de-aged Burn Gorman, Prince de-aged Burn Gorman. Sorry. He does throw Millie Bobby Brown into the chasm, which is something, you know, he does actually have the wherewithal to pick her up and throw her in there and try to kill her. I couldn't see Jord doing that. I think he's too wimpy to actually commit murder. So I'm gonna give this to Yord, and also his Killmonger haircut. I just despise with every fiber of my being. What is that? What's that noise?
Someone's vibrator.
That's some neighbor is doing some sanding. I'll go have a word to them if need be. But is it too bad?
You should take your camera out and just go like out there and be like, "Hey, damn you!"
Yeah.
That's what I'm making.
Well. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. So Yord wins this one decisively. And then we'll go to next bracket, which is... All right. So...
God damn it.
Yeah, tricky one here. This one does have a beard, so that's something, I suppose. So from Ahsoka, this is Ezra Bridger versus our favorite soy boy, Alf.
So... Oh, yeah. Yeah, we still got noise coming through the mic.
Oh, God damn.
I'll
mute it.
Really annoying.
I'm like headcanoning that you run like a cam girl brothel or something.
All right,
so
give me your answers.
The guy on the left, I don't know who he is, but the fact that he has a beard, I think, puts him above Rings of Power Elrond. Rings of Power Elrond is unbelievably indecisive and weak. But the show bends over backwards to make him appear that he has strong convictions and loyalty and values and all the rest of it, but he absolutely does not. So Elrond is the most soy, I think.
I agree with that. Honestly, I feel like Ezra was like barely in Ahsoka as well, so there's not much of a sample size.
I have to go with Ezra. Fuck this one. I have to because Sabine tries to give him a lightsaber and he refuses to take it and he says, "No, the Force is my ally." And it's like he doesn't even have the balls to use a lightsaber. He doesn't look like you've heard the expression "make love, not war." This is the kind of guy who looks like he's capable of neither. He's just awful. He's also the embodiment of that kind of Disney-fied male counterpart character, which Disney really pushed, whereby it's a male character. He's completely sexless. Disney wanted to give the impression that he is completely incapable of ever penetrating a woman in any way. It's awful. He's no masculinity, and he has this annoying little grin. Sabine comes all the way across the galaxy, and all he can do is hug her. It's like, Jesus, man, you haven't been laid in a long time. You're not even going to give it a shot. So I just despise this character. I hate him. So it's him for me.
I didn't even finish Ahsoka, so I didn't even get to see Ezra. I got bored after 4 episodes, so I have to go with Elrond by default.
Sounds like I'm in a sonic hurricane at the moment, but are we going with Ezra? Is Ezra the winner?
No, I think Elrond. It was 3-1 Elrond.
Yeah.
Okay, let me make the... While I'm making the changes, you guys stew over the next bracket, which is this is the guy from Willow versus the that super wimpy soy guy who tries to attack the diversity elf at the beginning of Rings of Power. So,
did anybody watch Willow?
No, I didn't. No. So I can't even use
anybody?
That.
No.
You can't watch it anymore. It was so bad. They were so embarrassed by it.
I don't know anyone who watched the show.
Yeah, so I guess by default, the Rings of Power guy wins because none of us can vote for the one.
Yeah, I mean, he could be hard as nails for all we know. I mean, I did watch, I think, the first 10 or 15 minutes of Willow, and I just thought, fuck this.
I never liked them. I was never a really big fan of the movie, so I had zero interest in watching the show.
Oh, fuck.
I mean, I don't want to go to bat for Rings of Power here, but I don't hate that character. I don't like what they made him do, but the way that he was characterized, and I guess the broad strokes of what he ended up doing, I didn't hate it because he ended up being quite a sympathetic character at the end. It's just that all the build up to the end was complete nonsense.
All right. So the guy from Rings of Power, I suppose, gets this one.
Yeah.
And this takes us on to so that super wimpy guy who looked like he'd been in a car crash and then had massive reconstructive surgery, and is also soy at the same time, versus Wade. You know, not everyone is familiar with Wade, but I had to put him in there because I think he's in a category all of his own. So your choice between these two.
This one's an easy one. It's definitely the soy elf, because at least Wade is willing to go into battle, right? Even if he is a bit soy. But this elf, he climbs up a rock wall, and then he turns around to Galadriel and goes, "Oh, we cannot go any further. We must return. You know, it's too cold. It's too steep. I'm such a little wimp. Oh, you're so tough, Galadriel. Show everyone how tough you are." And it's definitely this guy. And then later, after Galadriel murders Robert Paulson, the cave troll, this wee guy pulls out his sword and says, you know, he's not going any further. It's so obvious what they're doing. This guy.
Okay. This guy wins it for Despot.
Despot sold me on it. I gotta go with whiny elf.
Okay. Well, I needed to have Wade there because, you know, never forget Wade. That's all I'm saying. All right. Just and this leads us on to the soy boy who switches in Rebel Moon versus Galadriel's brother.
Before we do this, can I just ask the panel, does anyone here know why a ship floats but a stone cannot? Random, any thoughts?
I mean, I know exactly why, but I feel like it's unfair because I made 14 hours of content on Rings of Power Season 1, so I feel like I shouldn't answer.
Yeah. Well, this is it's kind of a tricky one because at least surely the elf guy has, you know, he's an elf, so slightly mitigating, and he's got maybe a little bit of gravitas. But,
I'm actually going to defend both of these characters. So Finrod is in the show like barely at all. He dies in like the first 2 minutes of episode 1. However, he does take up arms to fight against Morgoth. That's basically his characterization. He's a little bit of an idiot because of the whole ships float and rocks sink thing. But the fact that he is quote unquote parenting Galadriel means that, you know, he's able to fulfill that kind of a role, even though he's not actually her father. He's her brother. And again, this is just, don't ask me why I know this. The guy on the left's name, Private Aris, he does. Yeah, I know his name. I did videos on these films. So he does basically stand up for himself multiple times during Rebel Moon. I mean, the character is a complete empty, like wet sock. But at the very least, I would not say that outside of his appearance, he's particularly effeminate. And his main, I guess, God, I can't be talking about character arcs in a Zack Snyder movie. His main character arc, if we're going to call it that, relates to his relationship with one of the village girls. So yeah, I wouldn't be. I'm not sure that I'd say either of these characters are particularly soy.
The character speed bumps for Zack Snyder. They're just they just inconvenience. They inconvenience his what he wants to do. They slow it down, so he gets over them as quickly as possible.
Yeah, with a checkout.
Who are you choosing, Taco?
I'm gonna go with the guy from Zack Snyder's piece of shit, because the reason being, I completely forgot this character even existed when I got to the second one, and I almost feel like there was things that I missed. He became hyper effeminate from the first one to the second one out of nowhere. It seemed. And because in the first one I don't recall, and I only watched the first one once, well, slowly once, but once. And I think he at least had some of his soldier-like qualities to him at that point. In the second one, he almost seemed like he was those were all gone. So I'm gonna go with him.
Okay.
See, I'm gonna go with guy on the left because his purpose was to make everybody else look better. Like he does. He's got convictions, and I like that about him as the character. But really, he was not a character. He was just there to say this is wrong, and then get beat up, and then have what was her name?
Cora,
the Scar Giver.
Yeah,
I think Cora.
Yeah, the Child of Fire.
He shows up. So yeah, I mean, I guess he's net neutral because he wants to do something, but the rest of the soldiers are powerful and strong and manly and all that, and he's.
I want to know how this guy even got into their like space military. He doesn't look like he can do a push-up.
So from I'll do this very, very quickly. From what Little Platoon said on the EFAP that we were both on, he actually bought the novelization of Rebel Moon. as part of like research for his video, and apparently the first chapter deals with this character, and his like backstory, I guess, is that his planet was invaded by the Imperium and his family was all killed, and then he was basically recruited on that basis. Okay. So yeah,
well, we're going with him, which means that I'll put this on the screen because we have to go through the brackets.
Sure wish any of that would have been in the movie.
Oh yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great if it was in the movie. It's also pretty much exactly the same as Korra's backstory, which
we had to make room for slow-mo wheat threshing. So
Yeah. Okay, so our first quarterfinal is
okay.
Yeah, the Jedi, excuse the noise. So curly blonde Jedi versus Mog. Go.
Either take it out or leave it in, but it keeps making noise. Oh, it's Mog. Also, because Mog, that name is sacred to those of us that like Final Fantasy, and that's not right that they use that name. And also, Suicide Boy, he didn't even really serve much of a purpose. He just had to fill out the roster. But other dude was, he was his entire point was to look stupid so that Green Goblin there could look stronger. That just makes it worse.
Yeah, and if that was close, the belt clinches it, and it's not close. Like Mog wins this by a considerable distance.
Okay, Fred versus Jord.
Fred, I think that has to be Fred, because
it has to be Fred.
That's what I think, at least. But again, I haven't seen Acolyte, so I know that people don't like Jord, but he is physically capable. He is supposed to be competent, and he is able to fight with a lightsaber and all the rest of it, whereas Fred just has a small dick. So
small like dick. Yeah.
I agree with Random, because seeing as how I'm pretty much the president of the anti-Jord fan club at this point, for me to say that it's more Fred, I think that's a pretty solid endorsement for how much of a soy boy Fred is. But I don't. Jord himself doesn't really fit a lot of the qualities of the quote unquote soy boy. Like, he still actually has some degree of physical masculinity to him, whereas Fred is about as frail looking as can be.
I mean, Fred's function as a character is to be a pathetic, low T, rich, spoiled white male. That is his function, and that's it. So. Yeah, it's Fred, obviously. Yeah, he was designed that way. He was designed to be laughed at and mocked and made fun of, and to be pathetic and to insult masculinity.
Yeah. If this was a who's dumber contest, it would be Jord. But it's not. That's not what we're debating.
All right, so you've got Bloomin' Elrond and Skinny White Boy. Go.
I'll give it to Skinny White Boy, because at least Elrond, he actually participates in a rock breaking contest, and he breaks those rocks. He has some physicality to him, I suppose. And yeah, so he does get involved in the furnace work at the end as well. Whereas this skinny guy, he's just kind of annoying and adolescent. And yeah, I'll give it to the skinny kid.
I actually thought that kid was a girl at first.
Yeah, if there's someone who's femme coded, that's
I'm not
definitely femme coded. Yeah,
joking about that. I really did think that was a girl.
So we're going for him because Elrond does break the rocks. That's true.
Elrond does break the rocks, and he does imply later in the season that he could have beaten Durin, which is complete bullshit. But fine, yeah, he was at least able to break the rocks. We can give him that.
That might take him out of the whole contest together. I mean,
it's so counterintuitive, isn't it? Like we
might have to go retroactively back and redo the first round now that I'm thinking about the rock breaking.
Yeah. All right. Okay. And then the last one is there's a bit of a doozy one here. You've got the elf, the passive elf who defers to Galadriel versus the passive soy dissident from Rebel Moon.
No, passive elf serves the same thing as Mog. Like, that's his whole job is to just look weak on purpose, so that by comparison, Galadriel looks strong and powerful, like a leader.
Mm-hmm.
It's elf boy.
It's got to be elf boy. pacifist soy elf, the conscientious objector soy boy elf.
It's going to come down to those two, and we're going to have to like split so many hairs because they're essentially the same character.
Yeah, they are the same character.
Yeah, good point. So first semi-final. This is a tricky one here. Look at this, my God. Mog versus Fred.
See, these two should have been on opposite sides. This would have been the epic.
I will say this. Fred does end up accidentally killing the main murderer from season 1. And he jumps up in a courtroom and wields a knife around and kind of goes crazy. So there's a little bit of masculinity in there. There's a little bit of anger. You know, he's able to get angry and he's able to do some damage when it comes down to it, even if by accident. So and even if through emotional incontinence. So there's a little something there, and he is very aware of his public image, and he's trying to. He's in a state of. He's constantly in a state of masculine becoming. He's just bumbling his way through it. So I think he just about clinches it over the cowardly little soy boy elf who refuses to fight because he's too much of a wimp, and Galadriel is just so much tougher than he is.
Also, he has a tendency within. I mean, I've only watched a little bit of the show. I mostly just followed like Platoon's videos and stuff, and Despot. But he at least does get whenever someone tries to put him down, he at least fights back a little bit. He shows like even the slightest amount of backbone, even if it's just like, I'm not like that, guys. That's not correct. Like, whereas the Mog doesn't even do that. He gives a point. He'll be like, we should do it this way, and it's like, oh no, we're not doing it that way. He's like, okay, like that's.
So Mog versus Fred. Who's the?
I'm going with Fred. I'm going to be contrarian. I'm going to go with Fred because Fred was designed. He's malicious. Mog is a passive, sad thing that is just designed to be there to make Leslie's wife look better by passive comparison. Where Fred is a malicious hatred of all things men by Mindy Kaling and her co-writers. That to me puts Fred over the top.
That was kind of my thinking as well, is that my understanding of Fred in the Velma show is that he is designed to be exactly the kind of character that we're describing in all of these examples, like an exaggerated satirical parody of that kind of person. So I would agree. I would say Fred, but I haven't seen the Acolyte. So,
well, I mean, that's exactly the point. Fred, because he's a parody of what the Mindy Kaling perceives to be toxic masculinity. There is a little bit of overly aggressive masculinity in there. At least he does have a little bit of aggression. Whereas Mog, he has zero aggression. He is not capable of anything even resembling a masculine action. He's a little just. They
surgically removed his spine. Go ahead, say.
Yeah, he's they have metaphorically castrated him. He's a eunuch.
Yeah. Like I said, like at least Fred, when someone says something to him, he at least gets upset about it. Which it's not much of a backbone, but it's at least like it exists.
All right, Echo, you've got to do it. We're deadlocked.
I was going to say, you're convincing me. I think I'm going to defect. I think I'm going to defect and go. I think so. I think you've convinced me.
All right. So it's Mog then.
Who are you defecting to? We're defecting to Mog. I think
yes.
It has to go with Mog, yeah. Just in terms of criteria of being pure passivity, pure patheticness, and wimpiness, and lack of masculinity in all regards, I think he has to take it. So I think just by a hair, he would advance. But compelling arguments on both sides. That's the key thing. Okay, so there's our one grand finalist. And then on the other side, come on, there's a lot of soy going on here. So who do you go with?
Same arguments for elf guy, just everything.
Everything we said. I mean, even though like the effeminate looking little guy in the bar, at least he stands up to stand in Legolas.
Okay, so here's your grand final.
Okay. Oh, can we declare co-champions?
They're the same picture.
It's the same character, yeah. So let me go around the horn, starting with random.
It's got to be the guy on the left, because I do think that Thondir is the character's name. Again, don't ask me why. This is just engraved into my brain. He is at the very least a soldier, and he is, apart from Galadriel, he appears to be the commander of those elves. He's Galadriel's number 2, which means he is able to fulfill that kind of a role. The guy on the left, I don't think has ever seen daylight. Yeah, that's all I got.
Shows how much you know. He's in daylight in that picture. for the first time in his life.
That's not daylight. That's green screen daylight. It's not the same.
Yeah, true. All right, Dark Hour. Who do you plump for?
Oh, 100% Mog. My reasoning is just going to be based on purely physical. He literally looks like he doesn't have an ounce of fat on his body. He's so skinny. The outfit, like, was it you, Despot, who pointed out the belt?
Yeah.
Everything about him. Whereas, what's the other character's name? I forget.
Thunder.
Yeah, at least he kind of looks like he might have something going on there. Mog, 100%.
Okay, I'll keep this very simple. Both of these guys, take away all their weapons, who wins in a fight?
Oh, okay. Thunder, easy.
Right. Of course, like Mog couldn't throw a hissy fit, never mind a punch. Okay, it's definitely Mog.
All right.
Yeah, no, they even went so far as to have Mog not have his lightsaber out when the giant bug attacked, just to display the light whip, and it was very underwhelming. That was stupid. But no, they even went so far as to then cut to him, then belatedly grabbing his lightsaber like a dunce, and just I'm late. Oh well, okay. But I mean, it was just so hard. They tried to make him look stupid.
No, that wasn't his lightsaber. He was tucking away his popped boner. That he was like, "Oh my God, you're so powerful."
Is this the Mog character? Is he like a full-on Jedi, or what is he?
He's a Padawan. I mean, if we're really going, and not just throwing random words at, he is actually supposed to be in training a Padawan. So,
okay, but yeah, even so, fair enough.
Yeah, but like I'm going to try to be at least somewhat fair there. He's not supposed to be fully empowered yet.
Wait, we saw last episode of Padawan dual saber it up.
I said he's not supposed to be. I didn't say that they were going to be consistent.
I'll go with Mog as well.
All right, Mog takes it. Then we do the thing.
Takes it. That's the first thing he's ever taken.
Ha.
Well, the Acolyte does. I mean, don't tell me the Acolyte didn't win an award. Like, there you go. That's an accolade right there.
Boom.
There is also a bit of prisoner of the moment with it as well. It is the freshest thing. We have to remember that.
One question that I just want to throw out very briefly is, which show is worse, The Acolyte or Rings of Power?
The Acolyte by a mile.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So damaging wise or writing wise?
Oh, I'm talking like forget the impact that it's having on Star Wars or Tolkien or whatever. Just take it as a story. Which one is worse?
It's definitely The Acolyte. It's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and the Acolyte, or the Rings of Power went somewhere. It's trying to show the rise of Sauron and the rings, and it's not doing a great job, but it had a point. The Acolyte can't really have too big of a reveal lest it ruin its own timeline. Which
you guys discuss this. I'm gonna try and get that soaring under control. So talk among yourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely the Acolyte because I mean, at least Rings of Power is a terrible show, but at least it has a couple of little mystery boxes which you can keep you watching. Whereas by the time you get to episode 3 or 4 of the Acolyte, yes, they do have. I mean, they don't even have any mystery. Basically, the mystery box is Kylo Rent boy. Who is he? What's under that gimp mask?
Yeah.
But you don't really care. And then after that, the only thing they've got left is what really happened on Manson Danny with the lesbian Gesserit. And we know what the answer is. They were massacred by the Jedi. So there's just nothing there. There's not a single reason to keep watching. And the characters are all detestable. Whereas at least in Rings of Power, a lot of people did like the little screen duo of Gimli McHaggis and the elf. I can't remember their names.
Durin and Elrond, yeah.
Yeah, Durin and Elrond. That was those actors had good chemistry, at least, and there were a couple of scenes where they played well off each other. So there were a few things in Rings of Power, and sometimes the production design did come through because they had spent a lot of money on it. A lot of times it looked shit, but sometimes it looked okay. Yeah. So there were a few things about Rings of Power. I'll not totally condemn it. I mean, Random would be. He's obviously gone into a lot more detail than me. He knows it much better than me. What are your thoughts, Random?
Well, this is the thing. That's why I was asking, is because I don't know the Acolyte. I'm guessing anywhere near as well as you guys do, because I have only seen 2 episodes. The impression that I get is that they were of a similar level of quality, but again, from what I have heard, episode 3 of the Acolyte is where everything just, it was to say it fell off a cliff implies that it was at the top of a cliff to begin with, which might not be fair. Yeah.
So the Acolyte makes almost every amateur hour writing mistake too. Every time there's like about to be a reveal of the conversation gets cut off, and it's the same conversation every time. They've stretched out one conversation to 6 episodes at this point. Every time the character of Saul tries to be like, "Well, I did," and you might as well have some sort of like guillotine cut the episode right there, because that's what they do every time. And it's just the bot, like they try to have these reveals of things that are surprising, but they're never a surprise. Like everybody could see, if you paid even the smallest amount of attention, who the master was going to be. So
literally episode 2. I mean, it was pretty plain. I think the only reason nobody really, I saw so much conversation of people like, I'm pretty sure it's him, but no, it can't be, right? Like no, it can't be that guy. It's almost too easy. Like he's obviously the mystery show plant that is supposed to make
the red herring.
Him,
yeah.
And then it really is somebody else. And the show was like, what if we're subversive and we actually go with the obvious choice?
That's become such a thing now. Like, it couldn't obviously be that guy as Sauron, because that would be too obvious and stupid. So I'm going to expend unnecessary mental energy trying to think who it could actually be. And that guy couldn't
exactly
possibly
what I was
be
thinking.
Gandalf. So yeah.
Acolyte also makes one of in my opinion, the biggest writing mistakes, and that's making characters that are specifically there for one purpose. So like they're unitasker characters to just either die or walk off screen and never be seen again. Yeah. And it creates this cast bloat that you could take 10 of these characters and make them one person and at least give them something to work with. But that's probably the biggest writing mistake in my opinion, is that they just have all these extra characters that don't do shit.
They have characters that I actually do. I applaud Disney for killing some characters. Finally, I think that's actually pretty praiseworthy that they decided to put some stakes in the show. But what bothers me, you're absolutely right with Jecki and Yord, especially. They don't do anything, and no one learns anything from them. So you don't care enough about them that when they die, it's shocking. As a matter of fact, I think we all agree when Yord died, I wanted to jump up and clap. I was excited. When Jecki dies, I felt like, oh wow, they actually killed her. I was surprised. That's about as much as I felt. Like, wow, I really thought she was going to be one of the 2 main heroines.
I was shocked by that too. I thought she was going to make it to the end just because of the way. So if there's one positive I could give Disney, they really caught me off guard with that.
Yeah, they did. I mean, I was surprised, but I didn't actually care about the character. So it wasn't like, oh my goodness, Jecki died. That's terrible. I love Jecki. It's wow. She was being built up to be, Miss Girl Boss, prove everybody wrong, and they killed her. That's pretty shocking. But since they killed those characters off, it makes you wonder, like, what did they do for the first 4 episodes to help the plot or any other characters along? Like, if they had taught a lesson to Osha or May or Soul, or you're right, they serve zero purpose. They padded out the runtime just so that there weren't 2 or 3 people on screen having a conversation. There were 4 or 5 people, and Yord is reading off the police report in episode 1 to let us, the audience, know what Osha's life story is, even though everybody on screen knows what it is. They just had to say it out loud. So you're right. He serves no purpose. It was ridiculous. It was a complete waste.
Yeah. Well, let's pivot to old House of the Dragon here, because I've been really enjoying this show, and it's more than delivered on the promise of the first season, which had tons of world building to do. It had to have like decade-long time jumps. It had to introduce tons of characters, and now this thing can just really enjoy the world that it's created, and it's a much more condensed and consolidated world with just 2 factions going at each other. You've got this idea of the dragons as kind of like the nuclear option, with like mutually assured destruction, almost serving like like aircraft carriers in local regions and that kind of thing. The characterization is superb. Everyone's got interesting motivations, and everyone is interestingly balanced, and everyone performs a wonderful role. The cinematography and framing and blocking is beautiful. The way that people move, the lighting is gorgeous. Look at these scenes with the way that the light is so diffused. It's almost like looking at a Rembrandt or a Caravaggio. It's just it's beautiful stuff. Everyone, it's finely balanced in terms of your own sympathies. look at this scene of this battle here and this aftermath. It's extraordinary to look at. So I've been really relishing this. And in the first 3 episodes, very little actually happens. It's all just machinations and positioning and politics and court intrigue and stuff like that. So by the time you get to the 4th episode, where it's dragons going at each other, it's great. You've got genuine dramatic sensibility and tone with fantasy, high fantasy elements in it as well. So it's great. Between this and Shogun, I think we've actually been treated pretty well so far this year with this kind of drama.
Yeah, 2 excellent shows. That's a lot to ask for these days, and you're right. We've had 2 of them this year.
Mm.
And one thing I was really pleased to see, and you've touched on it, Echo, is the fact that we're moving out of that really annoying neo-noir, poorly lit cinematography, and we're starting to actually be able to physically see the shows again, because that was something that really affected the latter ends of Game of Thrones really badly. They just were so dark. They looked terrible. The battle scenes were too choppy and kind of OCD editing. It was awful, or ADHD editing, if you know what I'm getting at. Just chop, 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 cut, 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 cut. It was awful. So the fact that we're moving away from that and seeing something like that battle scene in episode 4 was beautiful. By the way, are we doing spoilers or non-spoilers?
I go with non-spoilers.
Let's keep it non-spoilers.
Non-spoilers. Well, there's a battle scene in episode 4, and it's the first major battle scene in the show. In fact, episode 4 is when it's the first episode where the actual war really gets going in terms of fighting, and it's beautiful. It's a beautifully shot battle scene. It's textbook. You could show that battle scene in a film studies class, and it's nothing very complicated. They're not doing anything crazy or particularly innovative or interesting. It's just very functional, well-made battle scenes, battle choreography done right.
Well, but behind the scenes footage, they show like the guys working with the pyrotechnics and the flame, and this is they get these gigantic streaks of billowing fire across these fields. It's incredible to watch. It's not CGI, and they got real dudes like with the retardant gel on them who are in the middle of these scorching infernos that go across the fields. So it's great stuff. It's brilliantly coordinated. Everything's like finely calibrated and balanced. The actress who plays Rhaenyra, she's a Golden Globe winner, and deservedly so. She gives this wonderful impression of having to subdue her own deeper feelings and grief and the weight of responsibility, and in order to maintain a sense of poise and equanimity for the sake of others. And so when you see it, people tightly wrought and tightly bound like that, and you see little flashes of that come through while they're trying to comport themselves, with gravitas among their court. It's great. And then Daemon, who's a maverick, and that has what are his deeper instincts, and so you're always speculating on a character's motivations, which is what you want from drama. You don't want to be watching The Acolyte where it's just strong female character archetype. This person,
they don't have motivations in the Acolyte. Like what, for example, is Osha's motivation? She doesn't have any. That's why they keep knocking her out and waking her up again, because she doesn't have a reason
everywhere.
She doesn't have a reason to actually go do things. She has no motivation. None.
Yeah. So, this show, it's just a great cast of characters, beautifully assembled, beautifully balanced. Everyone's really into it. That's the thing as well. Like you can tell the cast is really enjoying this.
And I love they do these openers in the shows, which are all about visual symbolism and thematic depth. So, for example, in the start of episode 3, I think it might have been that they were burying a couple of guys. And the point of it was at the start of the scene, I think the shot opens up, you see the guys and they're freshly buried in the grave. And Rhaenyra is discussing this with one of her officers. And as they talk about them, they move further away from the conversation about these 2 individuals and just start talking about the war in general terms. And by the end of the conversation, the bodies are almost completely covered in soil. And the point of that in terms of visual symbolism is that they're already being forgotten about over the course of the war, right? Already the first victims of this war are being forgotten. And it's almost like the considerations of the life that's going to be taken as a result of this war. We're past that now, and it's just they're just thinking in these broad strategic terms rather than thinking in terms of the human life, the toll it's going to take. That was brilliant. And at the start of episode 4, you've got another one in which there's a dream sequence. I'll not say what happens, but I'll not tell you the meaning of it. Just if you haven't watched episode 4 yet, watch it and think about what the visual and thematic and symbolic meaning is to that dream sequence at the start of episode 4.
Mm-hmm. And then the woman in the kitchen. Why is it, Despot, that people with like an Irish accent, or specifically Northern Irish, they seem to have a kind of canniness to them?
I think it's because the Irish have been, I don't know, I mean, because the Irish were under the boot for so many centuries that there's this healthy pessimism about establishment authority.
I guess
it's a kind of no bullshit view of life.
Yeah. As De Tripera notes, House of the Dragon is amazing. It's been a while since I felt excited about a TV show. Yeah, because you can trust it, you know? You can trust it to respect you and treat you as a mature adult when you're watching a show. And the idea of two gigantic forces that are amassing their support, but are also very tentative about actually wanting to unleash their forces is such a great conceit. So I like that. I like having that tension in the air.
Yeah, like the mutually assured destruction concept is great. The only thing Despot summed it up great, so I'm not going to touch on the writing because he did a great job. But one thing I want to say is that the production value is fantastic compared to a lot of things that we've seen. I mean, just look at this still alone. The details of everything here. Compare that to any scene from The Acolyte. Compare that to any scene from Rings of Power. It doesn't look anything like this.
And the framing and blocking. So they'll introduce scenes where a character is walking through an environment and we're following them from behind. And it's dynamic. You get to see them explore the environment and go through it, and then sometimes it'll switch and pivot to a different character and you follow them from behind.
It's like a micro one.
Then you'll have top-down shots to show the gigantic, and the size of these interiors in the show is extraordinary.
They've brought a lot of the Red Keep to life in this show, whereas like the Red Keep early in Game of Thrones, you saw a lot of the interior, but toward the end of Game of Thrones, it was just you'd see the outside and maybe one room from time to time. They're exploring the entirety of it. They're these long tracking shots of going up the stairs, showing how big the Red Keep is, which I love when they do stuff like that, because it has a thematic thing to it as well. Is that they're trying to show they always try to show the difference in class in this show. The Targaryens, or who would inevitably go on to take their place later, are supposed to be viewed as much higher class than everybody below them, and sometimes you don't really. And shows that are trying to do that don't get that across. But when you see that, like, just to get to someone's bedroom, they have to walk up 47 stairs, it really you start to get the idea that this is not a cheap building that they're in.
That's right. Yeah.
Did anybody?
The last season of Rings of Power was just 80% that short-haired blonde woman on a balcony with a smirk drinking wine. That seemed to be most of King's Landing. Yeah. Sorry, Despot.
Well, did anybody ever read those Choose Your Own Adventure novels?
Oh yeah,
maybe when you were kids.
They were
pretty fun. And if you made the wrong decision, as long as the book was well written, if you made the wrong decision, there would be consequences for that. Like the character would die or something. And that's very much the approach that they take in House of Dragon. If these characters make bad decisions, there are consequences for that. And that's why it feels real and immersive, and it's why you can invest in the show and emotionally connect with it, because when it doesn't matter how important the characters are, they don't have plot armor. If they make poor decisions, there are consequences for that.
Yeah, so huge recommendation from me. And the boys, everyone seems to be dissing on this. Yeah, go ahead, Daka.
I was going to say, the only thing I wish they would have did was change when the twins fought in episode 2. I wish they would have had at least something that allowed us to keep track of who was who. Because they were both wearing the exact same armor, and that made very little sense to me. I was like, why would he have the same armor from when he was at the Red Keep if he's been living here and he's a different, he's in a different army now? That was like my one micro complaint.
Yeah, I feel that the boys. I mean, the 4th season isn't the best season, but it's still really entertaining. And I think there has been some people perhaps slightly, I don't know, more right-leaning, who spend a lot of time critiquing and chastising people on the left or liberal people for being a bit thin-skinned, who perhaps themselves might have been just a tiny touch thin-skinned about how they might see themselves being dissed or disparaged in this show. And I think, I don't know, like I think this show is actually really good. It's just a huge goof. It's superheroes who are assholes, and they do crazy shit, and there's tons of body horror and visceral stuff that makes you recoil and laugh at the same time. And the actors are fun, and I really love these characters. And if they're overtly dissing, Marjorie Taylor Greene types, fine. It's, who cares? There's no reason to get your panties in a wad for our American viewers and knickers in a twist for our British viewers. It's just a fun show. It's just a goof. So I don't know why anyone's like got to be in their bonnet about this.
So I haven't seen seasons 3 and 4 because I completely lost interest in the boys after season 2. Because the show, I feel like season 1 was more than just a goof. Like it was definitely goofy, and it definitely had elements of that to it. Of like, I guess, turn your brain off, exaggerated absurdism, satire, all the rest of it, that kind of thing. But like, I feel like in season 1 there was a little bit more to it with regard to certain specific characters where you could actually kind of latch onto it and be like, okay, this is actually telling like a really good story. And then season 2 I watched, and I was just, I won't say that I hated every second of it, but it seemed like it dropped what I liked about season 1 and just dialed the stuff that was just like, it's all right, it's fine, and just dialed that up to 11 during season 2. So it can't speak to season 4, but yeah.
No, I completely agree with Random. I stopped watching after season 2 myself, and judging from what I'm seeing about season 4, I think that is what's happening for a lot. I think what's happening for a lot of people is that the novelty is wearing off, and so the underlying political messaging is showing through. I don't think it's changed, because in the first season, even, I mean, it was very clearly, a kind of a liberal take on things. We're making fun of nationalistic military worship, hero worship, Christian nationalism. I mean, the bad guy is a psycho who's wearing the American flag, obviously a spoof on Superman. I think it was, it was making fun of the military industrial complex and corporatism and all of these things, very big liberal talking points. But the show was interesting because you cared about the characters, you cared about their struggle that they were going through, you cared about I can't even remember his name. Howie? No.
Huey.
Yeah. Huey loses his fiance, and he's trying to get revenge. And there's kind of a heisty type plot where he meets this crazy guy Butcher. What are they going to do? How are they going to take on this Superman? And then we find out that the heroes are actually genetically engineered. So that's kind of a new twist. And there was a lot of interesting plot going on. There were interesting characters that you cared about. And I agree with Random that in season 2, I still liked it, but we started to just ramp up some of the silly, the over-the-top, gratuitous, graphic visuals. We're exploding heads. We're doing. We got real gross. And since you knew the characters and their struggle wasn't quite as relatable in season 2, and some of the novelty of like, wow, what would people do if they were heroes? What kind of crazy antics would they get up to if you had superpowers and you had corporate backing? That the novelty of that began to wear off. And so things like, oh, the bad guy is an actual Nazi. Oh, okay, that's a little on the nose. All right. And so things like that started to creep in. And what I heard about season 3 and 4 is that slide just kind of continues. And I don't think the political messaging changed. I just think that everything else that was interesting about the show began to wear off. And then all you had left was this political mockery. And it feels worse when there's nothing else to support it.
Yeah, that's fine. But from my perspective, I just think it just makes me laugh when I see like a superhero character who can reproduce himself, uses that power to masturbate, and all the other iterations of himself perform analingus on him whilst he's doing it. That makes me laugh, and so that's it. That's the extent of my enjoyment of the show. So, But I appreciate everyone else's point of view as well. But yeah, it's just there, and it's got an Australian and a Kiwi in it, so I like it.
And I agree with you. Like I did, in season 1, when the little miniature guy they're at some kind of nightclub that's like an orgy, and he's running on a table, and he dives into a woman's vagina, and the sound effects. He dives. I thought that was hilarious.
Hysterical.
After a while, I got a little. I don't know. I got a little grossed out by some of the stuff, and just a little bored.
I know exactly what scene you're talking about. By the way,
okay, I'm kind of over this. It's.
I know exactly what scene you're talking about, Greg. When because you keep like hinting at which one you're talking about, and I know
it was early on in season 1, and it was the sound that I was like, oh God, somebody punched a bowl of pudding or something like that. It was so crazy.
I feel like
it wears off.
I do find it funny though that like you said, that people are getting upset. It's almost the same thing. I actually drew a little thing that I like to use. So you got your red and your blue, and as you get further and further, what happens? You put a lot of pressure, and then they start to become the exact same thing. You have this, and that's exactly what's going on right now. Is all the people that were on board with, anytime the far left gets so upset all the time, and we're not. And now it's the door swings both ways in this instance.
Well, because a lot of what I think The Boys was doing in particular early on is it was directly parodying, I guess, Disney, but more specifically Marvel, the MCU, with the kind of massive amount of control that Disney has over those kinds of properties. And in season 2 in particular, it started to undermine the satire, and it almost became what it was parodying. Like the example that I would go to is that there's a bit in season 2 where they're making a superhero film, and they are told from the powers that be that they need to have a girl power scene. And they have to do the girl power bit, and then they all pose in front of the camera, and then they say, girls get it done, which is obviously parodying the moment from Endgame when that happens, and it's completely inexplicable. But then by the end of season 2, they do it for real, and don't realize that they've just done exactly what they were taking the piss out of 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, fair enough. So just kind of want to end on this idea, which is we've all developed a superpower of our own. It's not a great superpower. It's probably the stupidest one of all, but it is the superpower of foresight. So we know if there's a Hollywood project coming, we can tell almost from the point of its inception what the timeline is going to be. So if we see the Rings of Power, we know from the first cast announcements, the first stirrings in the media, we know the exact timeline of how it's going to go down and how it's going to pan out. If it's a Star Wars project, we know exactly how it's going to go because we've seen it so many times and we've been through this cycle so many times that's our superpower. So I wanted to take the new Star Wars Rey movie, and I just want to go through the cycle because we're so adept at predicting this now. It's our one talent that we have. So I just want to go through from its inception. We've been through the inception, and then there's going to be behind the scenes, initial stirrings, and then there will be the first teaser trailer. So let's go from the first teaser trailer. So what is the exact process going to be based on our incredible amassed experience at going through the trauma of this with horrible projects that divide everyone and pan out to be crap? What can we expect? What do you envisage from the first teaser trailer? So I'll start off by saying that it will be inevitably downvoted on YouTube by a ratio of about 6-1. And then that will cause the initial stirring in Deadline and Collider of Star Wars hateful fans already trying to divide a project and want to bring down something because there's a huge male fan base that has trouble accepting that it could be strong female characters and a strong female director in this project. And so we're seeing them being petulant again. So those articles get written. What's actually in the teaser, if you were to envisage the Rey movie teaser?
I would have guessed that the Rey movie teaser will be a bit like a Rings of Power teaser. It will have a bunch of vague, nebulous images and not really communicate much at all. It'll be frustrating and boring and just a plain old shit trailer, just badly made. So that would be my guess. there's not going to be much story there. It will just be teasers. I remember the Force Awakens trailer did a lot of black screen. It was really annoying, really pretentious. If you just took the black screen, it's like half the trailer. I could see them doing that. You know, where they hit a high piano, like a high piano note, like it's like ding,
ding. Yeah, exactly.
And it's black screen, and then you see an image. It'll be that. It'll be garbage.
It'll be that combined with ding, 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 ding,
yeah.
And then it will always start with that slow, low opening song. I think that's
on the piano, so it'll be bum bum dun, da, da, da.
And exactly. I know that's why you're 100% correct. Almost the entire Force Awakens trailer, the scenes were all taken from when they were actually on Starkiller Base, which was all like fighting, and it was when it was dark, and then the first half of it at least, and then they started putting in the desert scenes and stuff. So I could see them doing a lot of really
first 10
hard
seconds.
to tell what's going on sequences.
They'll do it in a way that makes it appear as if the fans are excited for this. Like, I know how excited you are, but we're not going to show you too much because we don't want to spoil it for you. And no one gives a fuck about the Rey movie. So that'll happen. And then obviously the comments will be hilarious. It'll be stuff like, my favorite part was where Palpatine said, you know, the ring must be destroyed, Frodo. Like, you don't get that.
Yeah.
One thing I think you won't see. I do not think you'll actually see Rey's face in the trailer at all. They'll probably do shots from behind with her lighting a saber or something like that. I cannot foresee them putting Daisy Ridley's face in the trailer because they already know how she's perceived.
So we can get quite granular with this. So it starts off with the gleaming Lucasfilm logo, with the slow rise of ding, 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 then the piano sting, then a ship going somewhere. Then I think you'll have the sand
on the screen.
Yeah, the sand will be dug out where she buried the lightsabers at the end of the last film, and then you'll probably see those lightsabers brought up again, because that was supposed to be a moment of like retro, excitement. And then I think you're right. We'll see her from behind a lot. And then we'll be introduced to the two characters that she's trying to mentor. And then the male character will be a definite candidate for a future soy boy bracket breakdown.
What's the bait? What's the actual bait? Because do you know how the teaser for Force Awakens ended with Palpatine's laugh? And that was the bait to get the fans in. So you need a little bait to get them in there. So what's the bait at the end?
Well,
is it like do you hear like oh moi at the end? It's
good
like,
question. Yeah.
Oh my God, Jar Jar returned somehow. Jar Jar returned.
Yeah. No, I think it'll be Samuel L. Jackson's voice will come across, and oh my God, he survived.
I was actually going to say something like that. It will be some sort of saber that is indicative of somebody else. It will either be a purple one that people might try to construe as a Mace Windu, which wasn't the one I was going to say. I didn't think of it until you just said that. Or a double-bladed red saber, which will somehow imply Darth Maul or something, something of that nature. It won't be that character, but they'll try to imply it as hard as they can.
1 second flicker of Mace Windu as a Force ghost. And by the way, just as a little diversion, when are you eligible to become a Force ghost? Like if you complete your Jedi training and you cross a certain threshold, do you then become eligible for ghostdom?
Technically, within the canon, it's supposed to be that Qui-Gon was the one who kind of invented it at post-mortem, and you have to go through him to learn how to do it. So I guess Mace Windu would have trouble doing that.
See, I disagree. I think that we're gonna do the Marvel's Endgame approach. I think they are unable to do anything without referencing the original 6 movies. So I think that the trailer will actually open up with clips of some of the prequels, some of the famous clips of Yoda counseling Luke, big moments. But what they'll do is they'll intersperse it. And I think this is a trick that I learned from Despot's propaganda videos, is they'll have like a training scene, and then they'll cut to Rey from behind training a new Padawan. Then they'll go to Yoda explaining the Force to Luke. Then they'll cut to not Daisy Ridley explaining what the Force is to some young person, and they'll try to do this comparison back and forth, like she is the new Qui-Gon, she's the new Yoda, she's the new the founder, better than all of those guys, better than Luke, all of that stuff.
Yes, the by association technique.
Yeah, they'll cut back to Luke saying, you got to rebuild the Jedi Order, blah, blah, blah. And, and her, yes, I absolutely will. I promise you, Luke, I'll do it. I'll do it where you failed, you old sack of shit. You blue milk drinking failure. I'm going to do it where you failed. And that's where they'll build up to.
Okay, so there has to be an inevitable cringe moment in the teaser trailer that everyone gravitates towards too. So what would you envisage the cringe moment being?
A very obvious merchandising droid or animal.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
out of nowhere just pops up and goes and it's cute and makes a noise, and then they just go buy one today. Like that's the one.
I'm gonna say the cringe moment will be a really badly designed villain, because do you know what's the bizarre thing is as well? What do you do with the First Order? Because at the end of the Rise of Skywalker, they destroyed an Imperial fleet that had been buried underground by, the corpse, the zombified corpse, the zombified living corpse of Palpatine had somehow put his Star Destroyer fleet underground. So that wasn't the First Order. That was the First Order is still out there. So when you start the Rey movie, are the First Order still a thing? Because that would be a real drag. I mean, the First Order are really fucking boring. I think even Disney fans would be quite happy never to see them again, and for the galaxy to just be balkanized, and let's have some sort of gangs or cartels or something.
So I think it depends on how far how big the time jump is between Rise of Skywalker and whatever the Rey movie is, because
it's 15 years.
Oh, is it confirmed to be 15 years?
Well, that's what all the reports are saying. They're going to do 15 years, and it's going to deal with Rey rebuilding the Jedi Order. That's kind of the rough idea that Kathleen, I think, has talked about. That's what she wants to see is 15 years in the future. How is she going to rebuild the Order, and how is she going to deal with the negative propaganda that Palpatine put out that made the Jedi look like traitors and bad people, and how is she going to deal with that? That's kind of the what Kathleen is saying she wants to tackle.
I mean, that idea does actually sound quite interesting to me. The question as to how they're going to execute it is obviously a totally different one, but with The Force Awakens, they already demonstrated that in a time jump of, I think it was like 30 odd years between episode 6 and 7, they were entirely willing to just be like, and the Empire doesn't exist anymore, but there's suddenly a First Order.
Yeah,
they could absolutely pull something similar and be like, well, the First Order was defeated, but now there's a Second Order, something like that. They could absolutely do that. Will that be necessary? Who knows? Will it be a smaller scale story about Rey with some kind of personal connection to a villain that may or may not be Palpatine? Probably not. I don't know how it could be good.
What I would not give for so in Rise of Skywalker, it was the Final Order. For that, some moron to call it the final solution or something. What I would not give for that would.
I thought they would go more of a Microsoft direction, and it would be Order XP or.
Oh, that could work too. Yeah.
The Final Order 2.0.
Yeah. Okay, so after the teaser trailer and there's negative reaction,
wait,
and then
there is one more cringe that I think they could fit in there. I think they have to make some reference to her communicating with Ben, with Kylo, that and her being shocked that she can do it. That has to be in there as well.
Okay, so lull after the teaser trailer, and then tons of videos come out, and then Deadline and Collider come up with articles saying, despite negative reaction from some incorrigible fans, most fans are super excited for this upcoming project. And then there's publicity tour or communication stuff that goes on, and then the director is in an interview and some other people are in an interview. So what's the first clanger that rubs everyone up the wrong way between the teaser trailer and the main trailer?
I think there will probably be an article. Yeah, there'll be an article that comes out saying the real problem with Star Wars is the fans.
Yeah. Those headlines will also say sexist backlash. That will be the exact wording that they will use.
One or the other.
The sexist backlash to the Star Wars movie.
They'll also assert that this is the first female-led Star Wars movie. They'll say that, or they'll say something like, "This is the first openly female-led Star Wars." Yeah, all the other Disney ones were female led, but this is the first time where from the start everyone knows that it's going to be female led, and that's why there's a sexist backlash. So you'll get that line from the press.
They'll also assemble a group of super fans that are clearly not paid shills that have no idea what the hell is going on with the series or like the property, and that will probably cause a lot of backlash as well.
Oh Jesus! You know what they did? You know what they did for the little? Sorry, Greg. I have to say this. It's so cringe for the Little Mermaid, as part of the whole narrative that if you don't like this, you're horrible and racist and evil. They filmed this little featurette whereby they basically showed the trailer to a bunch of black girls, and the black girls like, oh my god, she's blind.
She looks like me. They actually said she looks like me. I remember seeing that.
It was segregationist. It was the worst. It was one of the worst things Disney have ever done.
Okay, all right. So then the main trailer comes out, and do we get communications coming through about reshoots having to be done behind the scenes and other problems there? Do you think that will happen?
100%. I mean, it's at this point, it's standard Disney. I mean, Captain America 4 is on like its fourth release date. It's apparently going to cost $400 million.
Where did you get that information that it was going to cost $400 million? Because that's right now, that's all just rumor. Like if you look it up, it's all rumor coming from inside Disney, but it's apparently between 350 and 400. And the fact that they've had to rewrite and reshoot massive chunks of that movie, because apparently his co-star was going to be, I don't know the comics, I guess there's like an Israeli superhero, and that was going to be his secondhand guy. And they, after the Israel-Palestine thing came out, Disney said, we just want to cut that. We don't even want to take a side. We just want to cut it entirely. So they had to rewrite, reshoot a ton of it. And then, test audiences hated it. Typical. I mean, just like Indiana Jones, just like the Marvels, just like everything they do now, you see that report of test audiences hated this. And they went back to the drawing board. Disney have some of the biggest box office bombs of all time coming up, because that thing's going to be a massive bomb at 400 million. And then Snow White, they reshot the entire movie. They finished principal photography. Then you had that disastrous marketing campaign with Rachel Zegler. Then they reshot the entire movie and then redid the doors and everything. That movie is going to be one of the biggest box office bombs.
I bet that one's going to be. That would be 300 million. I bet.
I feel like
around the same time as the main trailer, there's a glossy photo shoot in Vanity Fair, and on the cover it has 4 of the main actors and actresses grouped together with the director also as well, and a beautiful tableau of a photograph on Vanity Fair. And then there's a spread, and then there's some controversy that emerges about diversity or representation in that from the casting. So what's that issue going to be?
Definitely. I think they'll go with a trans character or a trans person playing a trans character or something to that effect, and they'll have them in there, and that'll be the historic, because there has to be a historic something, like you guys said. It's has to be director specifically. They're having to get more specific with the historics. I've noticed that. That's true. This movie is the first feature-length film to be shown in over 2,000 theaters that has a woman director over the age of 37 that is also a quarter American Indian. It's very historic.
Okay. All right. And then
Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, the director, will be very heavily involved in all of this because she's a politician, right? She really knows how to play the game when it comes to manipulating the media to her own advantage. I mean, she did that at the start of the year when she came out and claimed to be the first ever woman to have anything to do with Star Wars ever. And so she'll be heavily involved in all of this. And any backlash, she'll say a bunch of dumb shit. And any backlash she receives for anything she says will immediately be met with accusations of sexism.
Okay, and so post main trailer with 2 or 3 months to go, there's a massive campaign against the dude bro toxic backlash against a project which is causing so many firsts. And then the initial reviews start to come in. So you get the screening reviews, and what's Rotten Tomatoes going to look like?
You mean what numbers are there going to be?
Yeah.
Is this before or after they censor it?
Critics, 99%.
Yeah, the
critics
can be
comes out
100. You're selling it short, Greg. It's going to be 100.
On Rotten Tomatoes, it'll be over 95% minimum.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Because I mean, bear in mind, Rotten Tomatoes just means so it just means if you give it a positive review, it's counted as 100 on Rotten Tomatoes. If you give it a negative review, I think it counts as 0, and then it's a really shit system. I don't know why they do it like that, but that's why like The Woman King had 99%, for example, because all the critics thought, fuck this, I'm not going to get called racist. I'll just give it a high score. So it'll get like 97, 98 for this Ray movie.
I think if you give it like a 6 out of 10 or more, it counts as like a positive 100%, right? So you have to give it a 5 or below for it to be counted as a negative.
Yeah, they try to use the American failure system, but that's usually like 65 and up is a pass. So it's like,
all right. So and then 2 weeks later, the negative audience reviews for some reason are obfuscated and held back, and then a week later come out. And what sort of score do you think that will be initially?
I think that there's 2 scores always. There's the verified and the unverified. And so the verified will be somewhere in like the high 50s, low 60s range, maybe a little higher than that. And then
I think it'll be in the mid to upper 60s, low 70s, because I think for a lot of the audience, they're just like, ooh, laser swords. It's a Star War. It was a good movie. Like, I really think there's a lot of that.
Then once you remove that verified like click, it's going to drop to like 30.
I think
that's right on. I would say that is exact. I mean, you'd see that with something like Solo. Solo is a shite movie, but a lot of the people that did see it, even though it bombed, they would go there and they'd say, "Oh, it's a Star Wars movie, and there's the Millennium Falcon, and there's and they gave it an okay score, even though it's a crap." So you'll see something similar going on here.
Yeah. If I had to give it like a solid number rather than my high 50s to mid 60s, I'd say probably like a 64 before you remove the verification filter.
And then when it gets released, like a wide release to cinema, there'll be accusations of review bombing on IMDb and Metacritic and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. So the culture schisms into one side being chastising the obvious and petulant review bombing that's going on, and pointing out that critics are actually quite well into the show, and the fan base is looking forward to it. And on the other side, you'll have 100 thumbnails with Kathleen Kennedy with red eyes drooling and crying with like a green tomato splat with like 25 or 30%. Okay, so
I predict the movie's gonna be pretty good, because I think what they're gonna do is something that I don't know that anybody's really tried before. I think they're gonna suggest that maybe the Jedi aren't perfect, and that they're really not as great as we think they are, which I think is a pretty fresh take. So I'm looking forward to how that goes.
How does the culture react when the movie bombs?
Well, let's hold our horses there. So opening weekend, thoughts?
For the amount it makes?
Yeah, or will it be the #1 film of that opening weekend? A Star Wars film?
It will.
It'll definitely be the #1 movie of that weekend.
They'll make sure that they release it against nothing.
Yeah.
Well, and everyone else will pull their films so that they're not competing, even if it's not going to make a huge amount of money.
Like I'm not going to do domestic. I just like all total, completely domestic and abroad. It's going to make 150 million, maybe a bit less on the opening weekend would be my guess, because I think it'll bomb abroad.
I was gonna go 200 opening weekend. I think it's gonna be big.
I think it'll bomb abroad. I think it'll do okay domestic. It'll bomb abroad, and then it will collapse in its second weekend. That would be my guess.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Let me see. I have to look at what their opening weekends were for each one of them.
I wouldn't even go 150 mil. I think this could just be a bland, generic. This could be like a Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny kind of deal, where it drastically underperforms.
It's possible. I think the Star Wars name still carries enough weight around the world that the opening weekend is going to be big. It's the first. I think they're saying that it's going to come out in 2025, but Daisy Ridley says she hasn't even read a script yet, so that's not possible. So it'll be 26, 27. So it'll have been a long time, and people will start to get rose-colored glasses about the sequel trilogy, and it actually wasn't as bad as people say, and we will have those exact articles, and it's actually really good and all that. And I think the opening weekend will just morbid curiosity and still latent Star Wars love. I think it will do well worldwide, but it'll have Wakanda Forever levels of drop off, Ant-Man and the Wasp levels of drop off, 70% drop second weekend.
Well, let me do some. Go ahead, Doctor.
I was gonna say it was 177 million for Rise of Skywalker.
I think it'll do less.
Well, I'm saying 220 for Last Jedi. So if it was more, I forgot the number, but it was obviously more for TFA. Going based on that trend down, I think it was like 260 or something for the TFA. So that trend down, you're probably looking at like 140, give or take 140.
Yeah. So let me try some perspective pitches. So Greg, if we had, imagine it's the same opening weekend for this Star Wars Rey movie and Inside Out 2. Which one would pivot?
I mean, Inside Out 2 killed it. I think Inside Out 2 would win because Inside Out 1 was a great movie. It's very well loved, and people were dying to see that sequel. Same thing with I think records wise, it was only beaten by Incredibles 2, which also had an incredible weekend opening weekend because Incredibles 1 was incredible. Damn it, I keep saying that word. But I do think that the sequel trilogy will drag it down a little bit, but I still think it's going to be. I think it'll win that weekend. It'll be high, just because everybody's Star Wars, lightsabers, but it'll drop off real fast. And I think by the time they get done making it, Disney can't seem to make a feature theater movie for less than $200 million at this point. And I think they're really going to throw a lot of money on this one and really a lot of marketing. So I would bet that the final tally for the first Rey movie will be 250 million, and they will probably spend another 200 million on marketing. It will be a massive marketing blitz. So they'll need $800 to $900 million to even break even, which they will not see. It'll end up being, well, I remember Force Awakens ended up being at $2 billion.
Yeah.
And then second movie was 1.5, and then finally they ended up at 1 billion worldwide. So I could see this one being in like still the 700 region, just because it's Star Wars. Star Wars name just carries weight.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it carries that weight. I think this is going to be a bomb on a Dial of Destiny scale. I really do.
I think it'll definitely lose money, but I don't. I still see it making in that 700 region worldwide.
I think if it breaks even, that's lucky.
That's
which we're probably looking at, like you said, probably about 750, 800 million to break even. I could see it making that, but barely, like just getting there. I don't think it's breaking $1 billion.
No, I don't think so either.
Entirely depends on what marketing they put out, which obviously they're constrained on what marketing they can put out, depending on what the film is actually going to be.
Yeah.
Because, Rise of Skywalker made $1 billion. Like, yay, well done. But the 2 films ago, you made double that. Like, the drop-off across that trilogy in terms of how much they made is insane.
Yeah.
And the higher-ups at Disney are going to be very well aware of that, which means they are going to be having these kinds of discussions about what exactly they're going to do with the Rey movie. Why did people not go and see the third one when they went to see the first and second, for example?
Yeah.
So if they go in some interesting direction that is not similar to Greg, what you were saying earlier about like going into the, what was it? The propaganda, fighting the Palpatine's propaganda against the Jedi or whatever it was. Was that pretty much it?
That's kind of what they're saying, is that she's going to try to rebuild the Jedi Order 15 years after Rise of Skywalker, and there's going to be pushback in the galaxy because Palpatine has sort of spent his reign in the Empire convincing people that the Jedi were traitors, and Mace Windu tried to kill him, and that he's spread a lot of bad, negative feelings about the Jedi, and she has to fight that while trying to rebuild the Order. And I predict that at least one man, she'll be trying to recruit new Jedi, and at least one man, a middle-aged white man with a heavy Southern accent, will say, quote, "Your kind ain't welcome here." I guarantee that will fucking happen in the middle of this movie. That's how they'll show the prejudice, because it's the only way they know how to do that.
All right. Well, so we've put it out there now as soothsayers and predictors. This is how
I have one wild card. I have one wild card here. And that wild card is that there will be at least one dumbass shill who tries to use COVID as an excuse for Rise of Skywalker's flop. Despite the fact it hadn't happened yet. That is my wild card. You will hear at least one of those.
Okay, good. Well, I'm going to do some just a couple of little super chats here. Blockboy Games, Australian, $5. It's ironic that the only thing keeping Star Wars alive is the fans, which is bizarre given how toxic they all are. You guys are amazing. Love your work. Well, Thanks for that. And yeah, we try not to be too toxic. 99% of what we talk about is just script writing deficiencies. So I don't think that's particularly toxic. Istari Azul for $1.99. Imagine a Disney remake of Showgirls. That's all. Well, yeah, bring it on. That'd be fantastic.
Showgirls continues to be one of those movies that's way more popular now than it ever should be.
Has anyone? I still haven't seen it. Is it good?
Neither have I. People tell me all the time.
It's wonderful. So I just want to see one Jedi and one Padawan saying, "I like doggy chow," and the other Padawan saying, "I like doggy chow too."
I saw the television version where they drew on clothing.
Oh yeah. I remember seeing like stills of the drawn-on clothing.
It was interesting.
Well, in some markets with Oppenheimer, you know how you got that actress who's like naked sitting in the chair. In some markets, they like did a CGI black dress and put it on her. You should look it up.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
It made it even weirder. Like the scene.
Yeah.
I think probably my favorite censored for TV change is in Snakes on a Plane.
Yes.
Obviously, everyone knows the famous line, but the censored version is, "I've had it with these monkey fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane."
The Big Lebowski has a great one too, where it's this is what you get when you find a stranger in the Alps and you feed him scrambled eggs.
I remember there's like TV adaptations of Die Hard where it's Yippee-ki-yay Melon Farmer.
and then I think it was in the next one. It was Yippee-ki-yay Mr. Falcon.
Yeah, strange. Anyway, box office brawler for $9.99. Good evening, scholars. Despite the Acolyte sewage flooding our homes, the cinemas are delivering. Thelma and Bike Riders were phenomenal films that reminded me of the glory days of entertainment. I've heard some stuff bubbling around about Bike Riders. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that because I'm a Austin Butler stan. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, that's pretty much it for today. I think we've covered everything in the world of entertainment and culture, so it just remains for me to thank Despot of Antrim. And what can you tell the folks about what's coming up?
I'm just working on my Acolyte video at the minute. I'm working on the script, and it's going to be probably my longest video, so it'll be a while before I get that out.
Okay. Daka, what do you got on? You're in such demand now as a player on the scene.
Acolyte Video 3, which will have another commercial in it. Only one this time, unfortunately, because it's only 2 episodes. So I'm only going to be busting it up with one commercial. But it's probably my best one yet. And then just 2 hosts. We're got this upcoming week. We have Pulp Fiction. We have Movie Cynic on for that one, and a couple of other really good guests. And yeah. I do want to make one announcement. We are going to be launching a Discord for 2 Hoes, which can double for the Echo Chamberlain show as well. We will make a channel there. You can talk about Echo Chamberlain's show.
Cool. All right. Random. What you got going on? What can you tell the folks?
Well, I spent the last few months fighting YouTube's copyright system, and for the moment, I seem to have won. So, yeah, I am sat on a copyright strike at the moment, but that's how it goes sometimes. So I put out a video comparing the extended and theatrical versions of Fellowship of the Ring. I'm currently working on doing the same thing for the 2 Towers. I also put up a Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning is Not Very Good video, which is a couple of hours of me slating a film that could have been a lot better. As for what's next, it's either going to be 2 Towers. I might end up doing something on the the Zack Snyder Special Edition, whatever the hell he's calling them, versions of Rebel Moon that are coming out next month.
Right.
And then after that, obviously, we have Rings of Power Season 2. So that I will definitely be doing. Apart from that, everything's kind of up in the air.
Okay, cool. Greg, what you got going on?
Oh, video game stuff this week. That article about trusting game reviewers. I've got a whole video about that going up tomorrow and why we don't trust them, and a little bit about that. And then I think hopefully by Friday I'll have a video up about video game easy modes. There's a lot of discourse about that with Elden Ring expansion being out. It always sparks a conversation about do games need modes, difficulty modes, yes, no, all that kind of stuff. So I'll talk about that on Friday, and then I don't know, probably back to Acolyte next week.
Well, after tentatively experimenting with doing a positive video and seeing the chronic backlash, I think the next six of mine will be chronically negative in response. So give the audience what they want.
What I have discovered is that if you go positive, you got to go old. like I'm working on a very long form video of Iron Man. Why Iron Man is just amazing character, just incredible, complex, and they were able to explore the exact same character flaw for like 10 movies, and it never got old. But that only works because he's 10 years old. And I think that is what I'm discovering is you can praise something that's old, but you can't praise something new.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, I've learned my lesson. So no more positivity from me.
I'm just going to scream into my mic from now on. Apparently that's working really well for me. I've got it set up. I just turn away like this, and it sounds like I'm really far away from it screaming.
Yeah, okay, great. I don't know, something like Kathleen Kennedy has to be fired. I'll just do like a surefire hit. Anyway, so thank you to all my guests, and that's it for today. So thank you, Internet and YouTube, for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to play the brand out rather than have us sit in silence. So here we go. So goodbye, everyone.